Hello good people of YouTube and welcome to my hobby channel and this follow-up video to Mind the Gap, my Saga Saracen
Warhammer the Old World, Araby, Kit Bash, hobby, nightmare.
Since filming my last video, I've actually managed to dig out some of my other plastic miniatures. I've got some Step Warriors here from Fireforge along with their Mongol cavalry. Two kits that I really enjoy building. You will notice that some of these figures are painted and that is because I use them in my modelling and painting fantasy figures book, in which I talk about flat colours, layering and using washes. That's page 83 if anyone was wondering. But I didn't want the miniatures to go to waste, so since then I have dismantled them and they now form part of this unit here, which I have painstakingly rebased on 20mm slot bases so that I can use them in a myriad of different games, including previous editions of Warhammer Fantasy Battles and Warhammer the Old World, by putting them on conversion trays to give me the frontage that I need. In addition to those plastics, I've also dug out some old metals. Now here I've got some pre-slaughter Arabs. I have no idea who the manufacturer is. I'm sure at some point I will find out. I started painting these a while ago and then just abandoned the project, and they ended up in a box in storage for years. Next to that, we have this very lovely Citadel Wizard on flying carpet. We've got the foot version and the airborne version. Now, I do have two more of these kicking around somewhere. I bought them from a friend of mine who lives locally, brought them home, ogled them for a little while and thought, yes, they are absolutely beautiful miniatures. Then I put them down somewhere and now I can't find them. So I've dug out my own original model from my personal collection and I will be painting that up to use in my Araby army. And next to that, I've got this very fetching Ral Partha Wizard with Spellbook. 25mm probably rather than 28mm, but I quite like the idea that your battle wizard would be someone kind of slender and unimposing. And the thing I like about this miniature is the fact that it has a very nice Arabian vibe to it. And I have owned that model since I was, I don't know, 10 or 11 years old and at secondary school. So it's a delight to be able to include those in my proxy Araby army. And if you watch my last video, you will know that I had a bijou problemette when assembling the Saracen light cavalry. That presented all kinds of issues. Please watch that video to find out how I solved those. And the trouble I had with the cavalry then led me not to build any of the Saracen warriors. So I still have 5 of those to build. I have my last Saracen light cavalry sprue, which I will be building, and that includes all 3 of those horses, which presented me with several issues. At least one of those will be a horse archer, so I will be building that in a pose that I'm happy with. And then I can't remember the name of this dude here. I think it's Al Mukhtar, but he is a Dogs of War miniature from Games Workshop, and I will be building a Saracen mounted warlord and an extra figure probably to serve as a battle standard, but they can also serve as a personal guard to this guy here. And there, in case anyone is wondering, are some camels that I sculpted ages ago. I've glued them together. I've done a quick conversion job on some of the heads to move them around, and that's just basically a piece of scenery or an objective marker. And then of course we've got Midas the Mean and his treasure chest or pay chest. So I'll start with the horses. This was the horse in the previous video where the back leg causes problems with compression. So I'm making sure the bottom of that hoof is trimmed of all plastic and the detachment scar is smooth, because if you've seen my previous video, then you'll know that trying to fit this together, you have to push down on that back leg, and that creates a tension within the model that makes it want to spring away. And of course I left my glued horses to dry without watching them, and when I came back they'd all done that basically. So this back leg here wants to push that horse half up and forwards. You can either nibble away at the base there, remove it to leave that leg freestanding, but then it will be slightly lower. I don't know if you can see there as I try and line it up, it's going to be slightly lower than the surface of the base, or we can glue it and have a go at using an elastic band to keep everything where we want it. Some glue on this half. And I've got a couple of elastic bands at the ready. These are the kind of rubber bands that you get on spring onions. I'll put a bit of glue on the offending hoof as well. And then we just marry up the back of the horse there. If I do it this way round, you can see the tendency that the model has to sit like that. That's its kind of natural resting position, and that's because of the tension in that far back leg there. When you push down on the model, that leg is forcing it to spring open at the neck, and we want to stop that now. Right, so I just want to get an elastic band under the belly of the horse, twist one side and loop it round the head. Okay, that's a bit Heath Robinson, but I can leave that to dry now. You can see how the tension that back leg is under has caused it to go white there, and that's because we're forcing this part of the horse together around the neck to keep that join nice and tight and small, so that will be easily filled. But the tension there is pushing down on this back leg, which is too long to fit in that gap between the body of the horse and the base. If you've watched my other video, you'll know that this is the horse that has the front leg that overshoots the edge of the base there. You can see the problem with the ankle touching the base, and on that previous video I showed you how to put a bit of sprue underneath there. I'm going to show you a different solution to this problem. I've just removed the front edge of that base, drop the body in place. We've removed that front part of the base now to stop it from clashing with that front hoof. That's gone together quite nicely, so I can let that dry. The last horse has the issue with the floating hoof at the back, which can be built up with milliput or green stuff anyway when you do the basing. It looks a bit silly, but it doesn't interfere with the assembly of the model. One thing I have noticed with this one, this is the worst for the location pegs just not keying in with each other. And now I can leave that to dry. I'm mounting my cavalry on 25 by 50mm slotted bases. So that's the next job. So I'll take the first horse. I'm still leaving the rubber bands on this, but just put some glue on the base. Now I'm just trying to position the horse so that I minimize the overhang at the front and the back. And sometimes you need to be careful. Less of an issue with base sizes for the old world because everything's got a bit bigger, but where you have units of cavalry that are on 25 by 50, the head of the horse can often clash with the tail of the horse in front. So if you angle your horses on the bases slightly, depending on what their pose is, I can get the tail of this horse up towards that top right hand edge there. If you're looking at the horse front on, I can get the head towards the bottom left hand edge here. When I bring another horse up behind, like that one, they avoid each other. That can be left to dry. This one, I'll put some glue on the base there. Looking to do a similar thing, just make sure that the head is down towards the bottom left side of the base. There's no tail hanging over much at the back, so that's nice the way that is. You can see there now I've got two choices. So I can either take the piece of plastic that I chopped off the front of the base and put it under the hoof there to correct that height discrepancy, or I can leave the model like this, and when I texture the surface I just build up to hide the base and bring the surface texture right down there, so the horse is actually on uneven ground, and that way you don't notice that mistake. Now on all the other horses that I fixed, I put little bits of sprue and plastic under here. I'm going to leave this one now, so when it comes to painting and basing these miniatures, I can show you how I tackle that problem. So that's that horse done. This last horse is fairly straightforward, so I won't spend too long on it. So again, position that on my slotted base so that I get the tail up towards the top right hand side, the head towards the bottom left, and just try and minimize the overhang. But that will then work well, for example, with the first horse that based up, and likewise if this horse were to end up behind that one, there's no issue. And if you want to know how I dealt with this problem, you can look at my previous video where I just fill that gap with some milliput. So I've got all the bits here now that I need to make a Saracen like cavalry warlord, who will also double up as a bodyguard for my Al-Mukhtar miniature if I'm using this army as an Araby or Dogs of War army. So I'm just going to quickly glue this guy together. So I'm making sure that I've covered the inside of the legs all over, and I just rock it in the saddle slightly and hope that surface tension will deal with the rest. There are some gaps there that can be filled when the model is dry before painting. I've chosen a lace torso from one of the cavalry sprues with the fancy buttons up the front, and then a sword arm with the curved sabre. I don't really like the arm poses in this set because they all seem to be bent at the elbows. There's very little that's straight, but I mean that's not too bad. Again, you just have to watch for the gaps because these parts don't fit particularly well. There's a little bit of a gap on the front there. So if I hide that, because that's the bit of the model that most people are going to look at, so I minimize that, I've got a gap at the back that I need to fill, but that's easier than trying to do it there. So I'm leaving that gap there, which I will fill. Now, you can fill a gap like that with sprue goo. Lots of people jump on the comments to tell me that they use sprue goo, and that's cool. I don't, because I'm normally mixing putty for other reasons. But one thing to be aware of when you're gap filling with sprue goo is it's plastic sprue that's dissolved in poly cement, and in order for that to dry, the poly cement has to evaporate, so you're gap filling with something that will lose mass and volume as it hardens. So you might have to come back and fill it again. And that's another reason why I tend not to gap fill with sprue goo. I tend to just use a little bit of milliput or green stuff, whatever I've got on the go, because when putty cures, there's no shrinkage. Doubtless someone will jump on the comments and say they've never had a problem with that, but I've watched YouTube videos where the content creator has had a problem with it and had to go back. So I'll be filling that with putty. Anyway, I have a different head here. This is from Frostgrave's Ghost Archipelago Crewman box, and I'm just going to cut the neck away there to give me a head that will sit on that neck. I'm just coming in there. Try and take that out with the clippers. Now I've started a cut because that will stop the plastic from tearing in ways that I wasn't expecting. And then I'll just straighten that up there, so we've got a flat surface behind the chin and a flat surface under the neck. And when I do this kind of stuff with plastic, I tend not to use the sharpest of blades because I'd always end up cutting myself. So my blade, scalpel blade, was a little bit blunt. Anyway, that head, I can now position that head on there, and I don't know if you can see, but there's a tiny front bit of the neck that's just forcing that head a little bit too far forward. So I don't want to cut the neck off, but I do just need to take that point off there, and because the glue is still drying, it might be better just to use the clippers to take that front bit off. Then I haven't put any pressure on the rest of the model. So I now have a model with the front of the neck taken off and the head with the neck removed. Glue on there, head on there. Just work it around till I'm happy with how it's sitting, how sturdy it feels. I can always come back in with some green stuff or milliput if I'm not happy with any of the gaps behind the head. Just fill them out and make them look like cloth. But there we are. And then I don't like this shield, it's too big. It obscures the face, and that's not what you want from a hero. So I've taken a shield from the Wargames Atlantic Afghan Warriors box, and I'm just going to glue it to the arm there. So I'll put some glue on the arm, get that shield where I want it, make it look like it's being held as well as the reins being held, and just leave that to dry. So that is a miniature I can use as a Saga warlord, or as a bodyguard for Al Mukhtar when I'm playing Warhammer with my proxy Araby army. So on this horse here, I'm going to build the standard bearer, but the process is the same as the one I've just been through building the warlord. So I'll just cut to it when it's finished and tell you what I've done. Now I've cut back to this before it's finished because I had the same problem with the spear arm that I've chosen that I spoke about in my previous video, with the angle just being really weird. The spear neither being held upright nor thrown nor used in a charge. That is just a very challenging pose to try and make look convincing. So I've cut the hand off this arm. So I can put the spear arm here, bearing in mind that this guy is going to potentially be a standard bearer in a unit or a battle standard to keep my warlord company. Now, if I wanted to, I could put the elbow back like that and position that spear so it's being used like a lance. And if I was building more of these, then that is probably something that I would do. If I hadn't cut the hand off, I wouldn't be able to do this pose because the spear would be across the front of the horse's body like that. But of course, I'm doing a standard bearer, so I'll swing that arm back into the upright position so that the cuff is vertical, and then a little drop of glue on the wrist there, which allows me to position that spear upright. And then, because it's just touching the corner of the fabric here, I'm going to put some glue on there as well, and that gives me an extra attachment point which will help keep that model strong. And now I can just put some kind of banner across there when the model's been painted. So that is my standard bearer. And finally, with this one, now I've taken the elastic bands off. So this one I'm going to turn into a musician. I've stopped the build at the point where I'm ready to put the head on and the musician arm. And I've done this for a reason, because it would be all too easy just to glue the arm on like that and end up with an unrealistic pose. What I managed to do with my other musician, and that's just to make it look like he's in the process of sounding out some sort of command. So we'll get some glue on the neck, and I'll just try and get the head. I chopped a little bit off the front of the neck there so that I could swing this head round to one side rather than having it facing straight forward. And that gives me more or less what I need there. So a little bit of glue on the arm. And then I can just bring the head back slightly while the glue is still wet, and that gives me a musician who's actually playing the horn. And then obviously there's lots of gap filling, and there'll be extra bits to add. There'll be bows and shields and weapons and all sorts that I can put on these miniatures, but for now that's the basic build done. As always, time is getting the better of me, so I just really wanted to do a quick scale lineup at the end here. I'll deal with the infantry miniatures in a follow-up video to this, but this is just the Saracen cavalry from the Gripping Beast Saga Saracen warband box. Now I've got Al Mukhtar on the front there, which is a Games Workshop Warhammer Dogs of War miniature. Next to that, the mounted warrior that I've just built in this video. Behind him we've got a Warhammer the Old World plastic Empire Knight on horse, and behind him the Saga Saracen standard bearer model that I've just built in this video. Behind that you can see an Empire Road Warden on his hefty steed, and behind him the trumpeter that I've just built, and behind him we have a Bretonnian Knight of the Realm. So there are some scale differences if we are looking at using these as proxy miniatures in Warhammer the Old World, but in terms of a lightly armed Araby army made entirely of old GW metals and proxy plastics, I think it still works. There's no reason why an Araby army wouldn't be on smaller, lighter horses than an Empire army. But obviously I do these lineups so that you can make your own decisions. And lastly, just so you can make your own minds up, there's an old school Bretonnian mounted metal yeoman or squire, the Saracen mounted warlord that I built. And then we've got a Wargames Atlantic Renaissance heavy cavalry or conquistador cavalry figure, the Saracen Saga standard bearer that I built, a dwarf from Fireforge, and this is one of their Rambuck's Raiders or something. The musician that I built from the Saracen war band, and finally an old hammer plastic Bretonnian horse. Unfortunately I don't have any knights to ride those horses. I've got about 20 horses and no knights, so that's something I will be on the lookout for, but there you go. As always, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Thanks ever so much for watching. If you have found this video useful, please smash that like button. Please hit subscribe for more videos like this. And if you'd like to leave a comment, please do. But remember to keep those comments kind and respectful. Take care of yourselves. Have fun. And I'll see you in the next one.